Now, when it comes to UK exclusives, we've had access to pretty good talents. I think this talent that's joined us today is has a very unique perspective as an artist. I saw him earlier this year in Emergency. Earlier this year, I mean, the year's only just begun, but some time back I saw him in Emergency, and now I've seen him in a very hard-hitting, brooding Malayalam film called Officer on Duty, in which he plays a very ferocious character. He's someone who I think is kind of, in a way, redefining what grey and dark really means, I think, in contemporary Indian cinema space. And that is, of course, Vishak Nair. So, Vishak, thank you so much for joining me on Filme Shilmy. And this is your first UK exclusive interview, so thank you so much for trusting us with this responsibility as well.
Well, thank you for having me, Anuj. I mean, this is great. Thanks for reaching out. Whole new market, whole new type of an interview. It's the first Zoom interview I'm doing as well, as a matter of fact.
Oh, wow, this is
Yeah,
even
yeah, popping a few cherries at once.
wow, incredible. Very good to know that. Right, okay. So, Vishak, I mean, let's begin. I mean, I will go into Emergency as well, even though the film has obviously released and it was a great film, but I will talk about that in due course. But Office on Duty, the role that you've played was terrifying. I think the way you kept saying officer and the sort of demeanor that you had, just seeing the pagalpan, the absolute craziness of this character was complete kept me completely on edge. As we felt that as audiences, how did you find that treatment as an actor?
Well, I think first off, thank you, thank you so much. I mean, if you got scared, I think that's half the job done. But I think that approaching Christie was pretty straightforward. In the sense, what interested me the most in this whole screenplay was that both the protagonist and the antagonist have very strong justifications for doing what they do in the film. And that was there in the screenplay right from day one. So I think it was very well written, and there isn't much backstory or anything of that sort about Christie. So obviously we had to do a fair amount of work on our own to kind of build up a backstory and get that going. But I think my with Christie and with Sanjay, I think the one thing that I didn't want to happen is to caricaturize them, make them like a typical filmy villain, with all of those bells and whistles. So I try to humanize them, is what I think I did. I mean, Christie is like you said, he's a ferocious, on the edge, druggy, bad guy kind of a fellow. But how do you humanize someone like that? Was the big question that we had to contend with. And I think what helped me more than anything else was the kind of space that the filmmakers gave me to kind of really explore and bring my own additions to the table. My co-actors, the rest of the members of that gang, were absolutely incredible to work with, and I couldn't have done this without them having my back.
Right. No, you did really, really well. But let's delve into the psychological aspect because I think this character is not like you said a typical like a not Hindi film, but an Indian film. Yeah,
Yeah.
Indian film villain, jo kehta hai ki, oh, I'm gonna kill the antagonist. Like it wasn't like that at all. It was obviously a lot more brooding, as I mentioned in my introduction, about the film itself as well and the tempo of the film. But at the same time, there's a lot of dark aspects to him. There's a lot of layering that's gone in. There's this sense of him being a youth, but at the same time also being someone who is completely coked up in his mind. So,
Yeah.
what really helped you to navigate those areas in particular?
Empathy. If there's one thing, I think that's one thing that, no matter how outlandish a character is, I think as an actor, it's my job to try and empathize with them. Come to some kind of an understanding of why this person does the things that this person does. Psychologically, obviously, I in my head, Christie isn't a psychopath. Even though he comes across as one, he might be a sociopath because he's a criminal, but he's definitely not a psychopath because he knows how to love. He has a girlfriend who he loves very much. He has a bunch of friends who he runs his criminal empire with. So that was my in, if I have to put it that way. That the moment I realized that this guy is not a psychopath, and he's coming from a position of love in a lot of weird ways. was what made me understand, why this guy is doing the things that he does. Of course, he sells drugs. Of course, he, uploads obscene videos of children on the dark web, and does a lot of like horrible things. But if you just look at that as his profession, then you kind of, you can actually try and humanize it. I mean, criminals aren't born inherently evil. It's circumstances that lead them to do the things that they do, right?
Mm,
So that's, I think, and I've been to Bangalore a lot, so I know the kind of people and the kind of backgrounds that people of this kind of substrate of society come from.
mm,
I've spent some time in areas like Shivaji Nagar. If if you've ever been to Bangalore, you'll know that there are some really shady areas in Bangalore. So yeah, been around, just had to go around and trying to figure out what kind of people live there and what their backgrounds are like and why they would probably end up doing the kind of things that they would. I think that's what it was. I think empathy and understanding, the fact that this guy is at the end of the day is a human being, and he's coming from a place of hurt and pain and trying to overcompensate for a lot of things that he probably didn't receive, is where his inner child is at.
Hmm. Now it's interesting you said about humanizing that, and I think yeah, psychopath. I mean, that's just still debatable, but definitely a criminal for sure.
Definitely.
I think I was really really curious to know actually when you said that you kind of have visited Bangalore, which is obviously where your character's from.
Hmm.
Um, was there any particular experiences or interactions you've had with people of this sort of don't want to use the word shady, but a very criminal background. Was it like sort of like did you like have conversations with people? Did you research about them, perhaps? What was the sort of prep process like for you? I think that would be really interesting to know too.
Yeah. So, I mean, in terms of visiting those places, I didn't go and interview criminals. Let me just put that out there. But what I did do was, like I said before, there are these areas that are infamous for the kind of, people that come out of there and the kind of activities that happen in those areas. And I've had the opportunity to visit those places quite a few times over the years. So I know the kind of people who live there, and these people are at the end of the day enterprising people. They're people who are subject to abject poverty. They're not living a very comfortable life, and they're looking for something or anything to just get out of there. And I think that's a common theme that you'll see, with criminals across the globe, regardless of which city you're from. It's circumstances, like I said. So meeting those people, and I've met a lot of people like that. I think it's their exuberant body language, the first thing that just jumps out at you. They're always the first to jump onto the latest fashion trends. They're always at the forefront of social commentary as far as the young people are concerned in their own very specific way. And it's very interesting. It's very interesting because they're very hardworking kids, most of them. They might have a day job where they're like a dancer, or they might be a part of an NGO, but they do also have side gigs under the table that supplement their income. So that's what I meant by humanizing it, because ultimately it's that kind of a circumstance that leads them down that road. And of course, with the drug use in the film, I didn't want to just pander to that image that people have of drug users, where no matter what you're putting into your system, everyone behaves the same way. Especially in Indian cinema, I think it doesn't matter if you're a cokehead or a meth head, or you're a morphine or ganja. Everyone behaves the same way, but each drug reacts in a very, very, very specific way, and it brings about some very, very specific personality changes. So with meth and coke, which is what Christie does most of, the kind of behavioral changes that come into being. I think that was something that I really deep dived into. Physiologically, the kind of changes that it brings to a person, the voice that you talked about earlier, that voice came to be because of the kind of drug use that this person has subjected his body through. Your vocal cords start cracking, your nasal cavity gets scarred, you get cuts under your lip. So all of those quirks, that this character has, be it the thing with the lip or the sniffing or whatever it is with the voice. I think it comes from a place of research. that is grounded in scientific truth about how these drugs work on the human body. So I thought that was important. I didn't want to caricaturize it. I think that was the most important thing for me getting into the film.
Yeah, no, beautifully said. And I think also, I also feel looks of the character might even play a big role here. Because
Absolutely.
obviously the moment see, right now I'm talking to Vishak, who's a very lovely chap, who is very, very intelligent and very dedicated to the art, but the character itself, like discussed, has come from a completely different world. And that
Yeah.
look, avatar that you take,
Yeah.
plays a big role in that as well. Like, the tattoo, the sort of
So
huh?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think credit goes to Martin Prakash for that. Martin Prakash being the producer and legendary director that he is.
Mm.
I think he was very specific, and he also gave me carte blanche to just jam with him to understand how this person will look and whatnot. Interesting fact: the look is actually based out of this Indian cinematographer called
Oh,
Jay Oza. Jay Oza had a hairstyle that was very similar to Christie's, and that's what we riffed off of. But yeah, there was a lot of back and forth and referencing, and then we just came to the understanding we're just going to stick to blacks, and we're just going to keep it as cutting edge as possible. And like you said, I'm an actor who is heavily dependent on the physicality of the performance. I mean, that's what my process is like. If it's more outside in than inside out. So I think it was incredibly important to just like nail the look, because just the way the outfit falls off the shoulders, it makes you look bigger, makes you look more intimidating. The gait and everything changes accordingly. So I think that was, yeah, the most important thing as far as designing that character is concerned for me.
yeah, no, for sure. But I think it's quite ironic because quite recently we had a film called Vida Muyarchi, the Ajit
Yeah,
film.
I just, yeah.
Regina's character, I would say, is probably even though of course she had the counterpart in the film as well, but I feel like it comes kind of revisits that world that where Regina
Mm,
comes from in the film, if you've seen the movie. And she's an absolute wacko in the film as well. uh, she's completely unhinged, unassuming, and definitely psychologically very dangerous. um
mm.
so I think, what is it, just coincidental that we're suddenly seeing these type of stories come on, or do you think that they're somehow reflecting today's society, especially of the decaying psychological effects, especially of the youth today, especially with the sort of influences that are out there nowadays? What do you think is contributing towards this kind of growth of characters on screen?
Honestly, Anuj, I don't think it's a recent phenomenon. I think it was Fincher who said that humans are perverts and that's why he makes films, right?
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So I don't think it's a recent phenomenon. I think that um, all of us have, repressed emotions, and we all have a shadow side that we carry with us, which we very, very carefully protect from the rest of the world. But seeing a villain or a bad guy going guns blazing on screen, I think is a little bit of an escapist thing for the audience as well. To see them do the kind of things that they do on screen, and which are despicable things. But at the end of the day, I think there is a part of us that kind of festers inside of us, and when you see these kind of characters bring out that evil side, or that dark side, that shadow side, I think it's pretty much the same thing as wearing a chiffon sari and dancing on the Swiss Alps. It's escapism,
Yes.
you know, in a different way. So I
Mm,
think that's why people are always fascinated, be it the Joker or be it any of the great, or Bane, or whoever the great villains are. People always have this fascination towards them, because it's always the bad guys who say the things that are taboo, who do the things that one would be very scared to do in real life. So I think that's probably why. But I also think that it carries with it a great responsibility. We shouldn't glorify any of those things. Like if Christie is, of course, people have been messaging me saying that he's cool and he's got the swag and all of that, which is all great, which is okay. But I don't want that to be what they take away from the film.
yes,
Um, I,
it's
I,
not.
Yeah, I don't want people to think, okay, if I do drugs and I kill people, it's cool. No, it's not. It's not. And the moral of the story in the entire film, in fact, is about the drug menace. It's about the perversion of the culture as far as the youth is concerned, and it's hitting on some really heavy topics. So I think we have a responsibility as filmmakers and as artists, and we can't shy away from that responsibility by saying that it's just cinema. It is cinema. It's the most impactful medium out there. So I think it comes with a lot of responsibility.
Right. No, very well said. And I think also a big mention goes to Kunchacko Boban here because
Yeah.
I mean he's obviously known for playing like he's often known as this chocolate boy image typically
Yeah.
in Malayalam cinema. And seeing him of recent completely do a 360-degree turn and really have this tryst with mentally disturbed characters. I mean, he did literally did Bougainvillea a few months ago, and now
Right.
he's on Officer on Duty. I mean, I just find it very fascinating how he's kind of completely just adapted into this world of psychological sort of aspect. But I think working with because obviously he's such a big icon, right, in Malayalam cinema, and he's had a great legacy of work. I'm not sure if you've worked with him before, because I know you've had a rich filmography in Malayalam.
This is the
Um,
first time with him. Yeah.
your first time working with him. Um, so when you are obviously with experienced actors or with actors perhaps who are exploring different territories as well, for you to maintain your own, I feel it takes a good artist to do that because it can be so easy, especially when you are working with a big star like that. So, what was the dynamic like? Because obviously off screen, I'm pretty sure as soon as the director said cut, you were probably just having a laugh and
Chilling.
having just chilling. So how does one necessarily create that dynamic of a cat and mouse sort of a thing, because I think it's very fascinating to really understand that.
Like you said, Kunchacko Boban is an icon. He's a cultural icon. He's one of the main reasons why Hero Honda Splendor is still a popular bike in Kerala today. It's
Right.
iconic on a different level. And I grew up watching the man. You know, and it requires an immense amount of courage to do what he's doing, to systematically break down that image and surprise the audience the way he does it. It's truly commendable. That said, um, I cannot let the fanboy in me take precedence when I'm performing with him, because then I won't be able to see Harishankar. I'll only be able to see Kunchacko Boban, right?
Yeah.
So I think that was the first thing that I had to dismantle. And when between action and cut, there shouldn't be any Kunchacko Boban standing in front of me. This is just the guy I hate from the bottom of my heart. But that said, he was extremely graceful, very charming man. All of us, the youngsters on the team, Aishwarya and Leia, the incredible actors who played the two girls, Vishnu, Amit, we're all, much younger to him in terms of our experience in cinema.
Mm.
So he went out of his way to make sure that we were comfortable, that we were taken care of, that we had a camaraderie between us. Only then could we, in some weird way, translate that camaraderie into hate on screen. So even when we're like beating each other up, there's a lot of comedy that happens behind the scenes. So I think hats off to him. It couldn't have been possible if he wasn't such a gracious, such a charming, such a wonderful human being, and more than just a star. So I think he's also an actor who's constantly pushing the envelope, and he understands the process. He understands the kind of work actors of this generation are doing as well, and he's always eager to share that information and learn from each other and grow together. So
Mhm.
shout out to Kunchacko Boban.
That sounds incredible and lovely to hear that. But Vishak, I really am fascinated by the fact that a lot of your characters, there is a very edgy feel to them. They constantly they're very unassuming, like I've said. And I think it's not just you, but there's so many actors out there in the industry that have this tendency to really switch between playing really crazy characters and something that is somewhat normal, like how you did in Identity, where you played the tech guy to the
Mm.
hero, which was kind of, pleasant to watch in comparison to Officer on Duty. Emergency, however, was obviously, again, I think Emergency, let's talk about that because see, I feel like with Officer on Duty and in Identity, you kind of, which were your two earlier releases, um, they kind of had you kind of had to use your imagination a bit more in terms of actually
Yeah.
exploring the navigating how crazy they're going to be, how creative it's going to be. Whereas with playing Sanjay Gandhi in Emergency, you already had an example of there's already access to stuff. You already kind of have information about this character is. But yet to fuse that with your own spin on things, obviously with Kangana's guidance as well as a director. What was your process like of playing that? I mean, because you did a very good job in that as
Thank you.
well.
Thank you. What, yes and no to what you just said, because Sanjay being a real life figure, Sanjay Gandhi being a real life figure, you'd assume that there's enough and more stuff to go on, and that was my assumption as well. But I was sorely mistaken, because this man was an absolute enigma. He hasn't given a single televised interview. He's given very few print interviews. Most of what people know about him are urban legends about the kind of crazy shit that he did. And even secondary research that you read are either from people who hate him or who love him. There was this biography called the Sanjay Story, which was very helpful because that helped me understand a little more about him from a somewhat neutral perspective. And even with regards to his physicality and things like that, there's barely any footage of him online. So we had to scour through archives of Reuters, Associated Press, ANI. Even the Indian government had some archival footage of him on going around on rallies during election season and things like that. But all of that is Sanjay Gandhi in the public sphere, right? But Sanjay Gandhi in the private sphere, no one knows who he is, right? And that's where the imagination had to kick in. I believe there was just one clip, just a single clip I found of him having a meal with the rest of the family at Safdarjung, and that was all there was. And there was another clip of him going flying and him talking to the pilot before he got onto the plane, and he was getting into the glider with his chappals on, and he was arguing about not wanting to wear the seatbelt and things like that. So it was just like breadcrumbs from here and there. That gave me some indication of what this person could have been like.
Hmm.
you know but I think the most important thing for me when I approach a character is to understand what makes them tick, like I said before. And for Sanjay, I believe that one thing was insecurity.
Hmm.
He was a man who was deeply passionate about a lot of things, but a man who was unfortunately a consistent failure, right from school, right from his time at Rolls-Royce in the UK to coming down to India and trying to open India's Volkswagen in Maruti. None of that went to plan, and when his mother finally declared emergency and when all of that, happened, I think he just jumped on the opportunity to somehow try and make a name for himself.
Hmm.
So if you put that missing ingredient into the equation, I think a lot of what he did makes sense, because only a deeply insecure, deeply let's say in a need to overcompensate would you do the kind of things that he did. So I think that's what made sense to me as far as Sanjay is concerned. I didn't want to, again, I don't want to caricaturize him. I didn't want it to be a mimicry of the man. I wanted to somehow try and capture his spirit, and that's why I thought this approach was best for Sanjay.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think Emergency was a very good film, and I think it's very unfortunate that there were so many protests here in the UK, and that I wouldn't really call it protests. I mean, I think it was more hooliganism than it was protesting, if I'm quite frank. But
Mhm.
it was very unfortunate that it got plugged out of the UK cinemas. But I'm very fortunate that I got to watch it on in India actually, and I think it's fascinating, isn't it? Because I think the subject is as such where obviously Indira Gandhi is a very there's a lot of polar opposite sort of views on her. She's
Yeah,
a very polarized figure. I think that's the word I was looking for, is polarized, because there are people who will love her, who call her like the Iron Lady, then there are people who absolutely despise her. Um,
yeah.
and even Sanjay Gandhi as well. There's so many emotions, like you mentioned as well. So I think for you as an actor, whether it's this character, whether it's um, you know, uh, the character that you played, Christy, uh, and I know you mentioned it as well before, is to have empathy, but how easy is it for you to not judge them on the onset? Because I feel like as humans, our instant reaction is to kind of make an assumption or to judge things anyway. So how do you kind of as an actor not judge a character, especially if they are quite problematic?
I feel as actors, we're in this unique position where our job demands us to not judge. And I think that rubs off on the individual, Vishak, as well. And ever since I started doing this professionally, I have officially come to the understanding that there is no right and wrong. There's action and consequence, and that's about it. Right and wrong is simply a matter of perspective. So what is right to me will be very wrong to you, and vice versa, right? So who am I to judge? It's circumstances. It's a series of events that lead to a moment in time where this person makes a decision that is then judged upon, right? But without having that broad spectrum of information about what made that person do that, I don't think I have the right to judge. But what, as an actor, I try to do is to think backwards, connect the dots, and try to understand why someone would do something or say something or make any minor decision that that person did in the script or in real life,
Mm.
right? So I think that judgment based on my individual morality has to be put aside, and the only way to do that is if you have a sense of humor about these things. And I think that's absolutely important, especially when you're playing despicable characters like Christie or Sanjay Gandhi or any of these people who are not, who are, like you said, very polarizing. Sanjay was an extremely polarizing figure. So I can't possibly make everyone happy in terms of my portrayal of this person. And I'm sure there'll be people who will be like, you've tarnished his image, or there'll be others who say, yeah, I mean, he was worse than what you showed in the film. But all I can do is trying to find the truth amongst the muck,
Mm.
and I think that has to be the approach. Otherwise, you'll be pandering to the audience, and you won't be able to do your job to the best of your ability, is what I think.
And it's fascinating with the sort of characters we're seeing. I mean, even recently in Chava, we had
Yeah.
Aurangzeb as well, and I'm so
Yeah.
glad that we finally had a representation which actually showed him for what he was, an evil tyrant. So I'm
Yeah.
thinking it's good that we're finally seeing like a different perspective to what has been propagated before in
Mm.
history books. So I think it's very interesting. But I'll tell you what also is fascinating is the fact that you've worked with Kangana in two films, Tejas, and now obviously Emergency. I think we're talking about, about what is right to you and what is wrong to others. And I think if you think about it, the sort of actors you have worked in Hindi, you've also worked with Tapsi as well in Sabash Mittu as well. So when you are working with actors, let's just say who are from different ideologies or have a different perspective, how do you not allow bias to actually creep in? Because we were talking about judgment, but I would love to expand that and talk about the bias of that you might have of individuals,
Yeah.
especially.
So when I got the script for Emergency, I had the same fear that I would like to call it fear, because that's you might call it bias, but it was genuinely terrifying to me because I'm not a superstar. I don't have the luxury of putting my ideals and my political agenda before the opportunities that come to me. I'm not there yet. But at the same time, I was wary, and I was very careful to judge the script for what it was. And I was very, very, very pleasantly surprised when I read the script, and I got to the understanding that, what Kangana has tried to do with Indira Gandhi in Emergency is humanize the larger than life figure. And I thought that in the film and in the screenplay, whatever sides of Indira Gandhi that people hate, that's there, and whatever sides that people love, that's there as well. And whatever sides that people don't really know about her, about the fact that she was extremely anxious for that period of time, that there was a lot of inner turmoil that was going on in her life as well. Even that was touched upon. So I felt that that was honest. I didn't think of it as an agenda piece or a propaganda piece, because if you want to find propaganda in something, then confirmation bias will come into play, and you will find propaganda in it. But when you were talking about it being sad that not a lot of people could watch it in the theaters because of whatever reason, um, I genuinely hope and pray that once it's out on OTT, a lot more people will get to watch it, because there is a lot of bias and social stigma that is associated with going for a film like that. Because like, imagine there's four of us sitting around, and I come to you and I tell you that I'm going to go watch Emergency. The first question that pops in your head will be like, why would you want to go watch that movie? You
Yeah,
know, you
exactly.
know, and that kind of makes it uncool in certain circles, right? But I'm sure when it comes out on OTT, in the privacy of your own homes, people will watch it and people will appreciate it, and because it is a genuinely well made film.
It
I mean,
was.
I genuinely believe that it was technically incredibly well done, and for a first time director, she absolutely knocked it out of the park. So I believe that film's journey isn't yet done. And I really hope and pray that once it's out on OTT, it'll get its due credit.
Yeah, I mean, being actually, her second directorial because she did Manikarnika as well, right?
Yeah, but that was her taking over the mantle after a certain
Yeah,
point, right? I
of
think
course,
this,
true.
yeah,
From
this
the
was her baby.
from the
Yeah,
onset. No,
yeah. I mean, she wrote it, produced it, directed it, and starred in it. That is not easy, Anuj.
no,
That's Orson Welles level stuff, and and that is incredibly hard. So you have to appreciate her for that. I mean,
that oh,
regardless of what you think about her political ideology, I know in today's day and age it's extremely hard to separate the art and the artist, but you have to give credit where it's due.
no, I agree. I think she was extraordinary as Indira Gandhi. Honestly, you know my sort of way of describing Emergency. You've seen Spencer, Kristen Stewart's film. I don't know if you've
Yeah,
seen Spencer.
yeah,
You
yeah, yeah, yeah.
For me, what Spencer was for Diana,
Hmm.
it's what Emergency is for Indira Gandhi, but with a
Yeah,
bit more facts
yeah,
and a
yeah,
bit
yeah,
more and a bit more sort of research to back it. Because obviously Spencer was largely fictitious and obviously more on the imagination of what she might have
yeah,
got.
yeah.
But Indira Gandhi, you still have more sources, I think, to kind of back that up. So I think that was what I really found brilliant about the film. And I think it was extraordinary. But Vishak, it's not just villains that you've played. You've played other gentler characters as well. You've not just done these completely dark and very edgy, you know, sort of peddler kind of characters, but yet somehow, I think because the way you play them are so strong, I feel like people tend to kind of overlook the other films that
Mm.
you've done. What do you think it is about you? And I think the aura that you might let out, I mean, I don't mean this in a bad way, but what do you think it is that, filmmakers are so convinced about casting you in these very edgy roles? I mean, because I'm sure you can play a very beautiful hero, a gentle hero too. So,
But to be honest, I think this is a recent. It's a very recent phenomenon. Playing bad guys for me, because I my first film, which was out in 2016, yeah, 2016, I played a college boy who was anything but evil. He
Anandam,
was
no?
Anandam, yeah, and it was this character called Kuppi, and in Kerala, that's till 4 days ago, that's what I was well known for. That's what people called me. But Officer changed that, and it was a 9 year long wait for me to give them a performance worthy enough of that change, because for 9 years I was Kuppi, and Kuppi was a character that people adore even today. Anandam is a film that's aged very well. Even if you watch it today, it's still a good film. So I think starting from comedy and then slowly transitioning into more dramatic roles was something that I genuinely wanted to do. A couple of years after getting started in the industry, I started getting typecast, and it was a little difficult for me to do the kind of work that I wanted to do. So I think it's post COVID that I got to work on more interesting characters, if I may call them that. But just a heads up, there are a lot of cute boy characters coming up. Footage is one film where I'm playing a very gentle boy, who's a romantic, plays the guitar, all of those check boxes when it comes to Chocolate Boy. Akka, the series that we just announced for Netflix that YRF did. I'm playing one of those, Maniratnam heroes, remember? Madhavan
Oh,
from, yeah, like the well-educated, good boy, kind of guy. So I'm very happy, Anuj. I can't complain. I'm so happy that the negative characters are getting the kind of reception that they are getting, and I find playing them to be a lot of fun and a lot of work as well. But I'm equally excited to see what people are going to think about the nicer characters as well.
no, definitely. But I think Vishak, it's interesting because I feel like right now I feel like Indian cinema generally, I mean, I can't speak for the South because I don't know it enough. But
Mhm.
what I can say is for Hindi, there is like this kind of it's going through this churning at the moment where I think filmmakers are trying to explore what really works with the audience. And hence why even a lot of big films which are just made just for the sake of profits are not working. And in that, I feel the shift that's happening is where people want more rooted stories now. And I think this whole pan-India movement has obviously opened up that whole movement of having actors who are more rooted. Because if we look in South, a lot of the superstars are kind of have that very earthy feel to them. They
Like everyday people, yeah.
very everyday people vibe. And I think that's kind of now, in a way, peppering into Hindi cinema as well. Um,
Yeah.
I know, Vishak, you're someone who is obviously very dedicated to the art, and that is very obvious when I see your performances on screen. But has it crossed your mind about finding that space for you as an actor? Like, do you how have you decided to fuse that art with the ambition side of things? Because I think it would be very nice to explore that angle because I don't think we explore that balance enough, in interviews especially.
Absolutely. I mean, I see, to just jump off of what you said earlier. See, I think pandering, no, I wouldn't call it pandering. I think trying to figure out what works is a very, very slippery slope,
Mm,
because what works now will not be the same thing like a year or two into the future. So constantly trying to understand what is working and what the audience wants, I don't think that's the right approach. I think what makes South Indian cinema, or Malayalam cinema for that matter, so rooted, that's the word that everyone uses now, right? It's so rooted, is because they're making stories from a point of view of, okay, this is the story that I as a writer or I as a filmmaker want to tell, and the audience should like it if it's a good film. It's not the other way around, where, okay, this is what the audience are liking now, okay, I'm just going to make that. Okay, people like Pushpa 2, let me just make a big mass action thriller. When it's that approach, I think on some level you're setting yourself up for failure, because then the intent behind making that film is just to get those numbers, the 500 crores, 600 crores, 700 crores, whatever it is, right? But be it Pushpa, or be it KGF, or be it Bahubali, or an RRR, the intent behind making those films was very strong.
yeah.
They had, auteur filmmakers making them, who knew their stuff and who are making movies that they enjoy watching. I think that's the most important thing. I mean, there's just one member of the audience that you really need to make happy, and that is you, and the rest of the audience will follow. There's an example that I forget where I read this, but I think it was Liam Gallagher, one of the Gallagher brothers, who said this, that fashion is the only industry in the world where people, they don't ask the consumer permission for what they want to wear. They design and then they sell it into the market, and it changes every year, right? And the consumers in the market, the audience, they consume it because the industry dictates what the current trend is, right? Um, the same thing should be the case for music. The same thing should be the case for cinema as well, to some extent, I feel, because the artistic side of things shouldn't die down, especially in today's day and age where you have technology, be it AI or be it your phone, that can write a script for you, that can make a film for you. You know, and how does a computer do it? The computer does that based on data, right? And if a computer is going to do it based on data, and what the audience is going to react to at which point, then what's the difference between you and a computer if you're going to do the same thing?
Yeah, true.
You know, so authentic human voices are needed today more than ever. And that's why I think today you cannot separate the artist and the art, because the artist has to bring his or her authentic voice for that film to have any kind of intent or longevity. And as far as my career is concerned, I the only thing I pray for is to keep doing stuff that excites me. The commercial viability of the project, to me personally, comes secondary. There was a film that I did recently called Exit, in which I play a guy who's been locked up in a room for like 25, 30 years, who eats human beings, who doesn't have language, who walks on all fours. He's a feral child. It was a crazy film, and it was made in a budget of a crore and a half tops. And I barely took any money for that film as well. But I did it because that excited me, you know. So I think on some level it's like, like I tell my wife, it's one for the head, one for the heart. We need to pay the bills, but we need to keep ourselves energized and artistically fulfilled as well. So I think that's a balancing act that most actors do very well, is what I think.
And this industry is as such कि दिल और दिमाग दोनों साथ में रखना चाहिए. You
जी,
can't abandon one and
exactly.
do the other because it's a very personal profession in that sense. And I think that's what makes it sometimes very complicated also because of the fact that it is very personal at times. I know you mentioned I mean, I would love to know actually, growing up, who were some of your big inspirations, I think, in acting as well. And obviously, as a profession, now that you kind of have come this long way, I mean, how do you feel like you've evolved over time? I mean, especially, I think this would be a good question actually, because I would love to know that, playing villains can really teach us about the society when they abandon someone or when they don't get that care that they deserve. It can
Hmm.
really teach us a lot.
Yeah.
So, also playing these villains, what has it taught you? So, it's a two-part question, really. Yeah.
Hmm. Oh, it's funny you mentioned that because I mean the actors that I loved as a kid growing up, Ben Kingsley is one of them, and he's known for a lot of villain roles himself.
Mm.
Christian Bale, another guy who's really good playing bad as well. Yeah, it's a whole long list. Of course, there's Mammootty and Mohanlal and everyone as well. And I don't think anyone plays villains the way Mammootty does. Um, Mammootty, sir, and his oh my lord, he's just. I don't have the words to describe how amazing an actor he is, and I'm so glad that this innings of his. There was a phase where he did, go through this rough patch, but I'm so happy that he's doing incredible roles today. So I think what playing a villain um, allows one to do is like I said earlier, tap into those hidden emotions, those repressed emotions that are there, within all of us. If you've ever been to therapy, I'm sure you'll know that just getting those emotions out of you, even if it's in a conversation with a therapist, it really takes a load off you. And if it just bottle it up, then it will manifest in very physiological serious ways, which can turn very, very bad. So in a way, I think playing villains is free therapy. I feel that it allows one to explore that shady side of ourselves, which we're all products of our upbringing, of abandonment. We all have abandonment problems. We all have insecurities and traumas that we carry from our childhood, and most of us don't even know they exist. But playing characters like this, in order for me to empathize with them, I cannot possibly do that unless I strip myself bare and go into my trauma and understand how to best vent out that trauma. Rage rooms exist for a reason, because breaking shit and smashing things onto a wall make you feel good, right? So I think that is it's an outlet, I think for you cannot play a good villain without having a sense of humor. Jordan Peele said that there's a fine line between comedy and horror. It's all about rhythm, it's all about timing, it's all about holding the cue. And I think in order to, like I said before, empathize and identify with these people and really get into it, you should be okay stripping yourself and looking at your own trauma and finding out ways to laugh at it. Because
Hmm.
if you can't detach yourself from it, you'll be too invested and you won't be able to in a way supplant your feelings onto the character,
Hmm.
if that makes sense. So yeah, I think it's a brilliant outlet. I think I should play a villain once in a year just for the heck of it, so that I get all of the filth out.
Right. And I'm just curious to know, um, what sort of roles are you keen to play? I mean, I think traditionally people would ask any actors or filmmakers that you're dying to work with, but the usual response I get is everyone. And that's the most boring answer ever. So I'm not even going to fall into that trap of asking you that question. But
Right.
but what would you say is a sort of genre that you really want to explore? I mean, because you've kind of explored a very vast range in the sort
Yeah.
of almost 9-year journey that you've had so far. I mean, it's pretty incredible the growth you've had.
Thank you. Thank you. One genre that I feel I haven't really gotten a chance to explore is science fiction. I'm a
Mm,
huge science fiction geek. I love my hard sci-fi, and I would kill to be a part of any of those films. Um, Growing up, I watched a lot of action movies. And that was my intro, my foray into filmmaking, watching action movies and then shooting them on a cybershot camera with my brother and my friends. And I think action movies are something that I would like to do a lot more of. I would love to do a film where I have zero dialogue, where I am just there, and it's not about verbose monologues or anything. It's just about being present there. I don't know if it's me being a mute, or I don't know what it is, but something like what Daniel Radcliffe did with Swiss Army Man. You
mm,
know, that would be interesting. That would be interesting. Um, I like weird stuff, Anuj. I
Yeah,
like,
I've
that's where the
gathered.
edge is. Yeah, I think it's the, I think that's what you very kindly called edginess, but I think I like weird stuff. So I think if I get to do, I would love to do the kind of stuff that Andy Serkis does. Play a mocap character. That would be incredible. I'm still a kid in a toy store. That's how I see it. I just want to get my hands on all of these toys and just explore and just play and have a great time doing that, and not put too much pressure on the commercial side of things. That okay, I need to have a strategy, and this is the only kind of image that I'm going to have. No, I mean I want you to run into me on the street and not see any of my characters in me, and just see me for the person I am. And that's the ideal space. Vijay Sethupathi is an incredible other example.
Hmm.
I'm not sure if you're familiar with his filmography, but he plays incredibly larger than life heroes, but he also plays very small town rooted, intimate, very, very soft characters as well.
Yeah.
And he plays larger than life villains as well. Mammootty says the same. So I think that's the kind of filmography I like to see for myself.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's a very, very good take. And not that we need Hollywood or the West's validation anyway, but I definitely see you doing work in the West as well. I don't know why. There's just something very much about you when I was looking at you and I'm just hearing your thoughts. I'm like, it's a very interesting vibe. I think ये आगे जाएगा ये लड़का पता नहीं ऐसा फीलिंग आ रही है मेरे को.
Thanks, yaar. Inshallah. I hope so. I really do hope so.
But look, footage is has been dubbed for Hindi now.
Gee.
And that's also re-releasing soon. Uh I'm really excited to hear because Akka also has Radhika Apte as well. And from when I saw the promo of it on Netflix, it looks really fascinating.
Oh, yeah.
Um so I know NDAs hate us asking these questions, but I will ask anyway. Um, what can you tell us a bit more about? I mean, footage I'm sure you're at the liberty to talk about, but even Akka, if you can kindly enlighten us a bit about that project and what we can look forward to and what that experience has taught you as well and expanded you as an artist.
Akka, I think, well, I mean, since the spot is out, I can, talk on the basis of that. As the name suggests, it's about a lot of really badass, powerful women who form the centerpiece of the story. As we saw in the trailer, it is a world that is not exactly a North Indian world. It is a world that is somewhere more towards the south of India, but it's an amalgamation of a lot of cultures. It's an incredible team that's come to work on it. The cast is just incredibly diverse and immensely talented. We have a lot of actors from Malayalam cinema who worked on it as well. So that was very interesting and very exciting for us. Um, um, and yeah, I mean, for me, I think uh, uh, the biggest takeaway from Akka was the fact that my wife thinks that's my best character to date.
Oh, wow.
Um, uh, yeah, and I ask her why, and she tells me because you play a nice guy. You're a sweet guy. Like I want to fall in love with that guy. And to me that was very interesting because I had never operated in that space before. And playing opposite Kirti and Radhika and that incredible team, I think that was quite something. And Yash Raj, yaar, I mean, come on. I mean, I never in my wildest dreams did I think that I'd be standing in Yash Raj studio shooting for something. That was a dream come true moment. Prateek Shah is shooting it. He's a gentleman who shot Jubilee and Control and a whole lot of amazing films. Dharmaraj Shetty is writer director. He's definitely a talent to look out for. Lakshmi Kirloskar, the production designer, did Dangal. So the world building exercise that has gone into the series is immense, and I'm sure it's unlike anything that the audience has ever seen before. So I'm super excited for it. I think it'll be out sometime mid this year,
Hmm.
um, June, July-ish. So yeah, let's see.
And footage?
Well, footage. I don't know if you saw the trailer, but footage is a found footage film. It's about a couple who are stuck at home during COVID, and they're vloggers in their own right. They're professional vloggers, and out of their boredom, they start not eavesdropping, but they start intruding on someone's privacy, someone who lives in their building, and then that leads them down a rabbit hole that takes them a little too far into the deep dark depths of uh, criminality and crime and adventure and action and all of that. So it's a very exciting film. It's a film that was made on a very tight budget with a very small crew, but we had our own lady superstar Manju Warrior a role that she's never done before. She plays the antagonist in the film. For once, I play the lover boy, and it was a beautiful experience. It was a beautiful experience because shooting it was unlike anything else that I've ever done before. We had to operate the camera ourselves for a lot of the scenes. There was immaculate choreography between the cinematography, direction, and acting teams in order to like pull off a lot of the scenes that we did. Almost every scene in the film is a single take. There's some incredible action sequences in it as well. So even though there've been a lot of found footage films that have come out in the past, I don't think there has been one like this from India for sure. For sure. I mean that I can say with utmost confidence because it's a very ambitious film for its scale, for the kind of things that we shot in the forest for almost a month with wild animals all around us. It was quite the experience. It was quite the experience. So I'm very excited to see what the Hindi audience is going to think about it. Unfortunately, even though it was an amazing film and we released it in Malayalam, the timing went very wrong for us. There was a very tragic landslide that happened in Wayanad last year during the monsoons, because of which we had to push the release. And right before the release was when the infamous Hema Committee report came out.
Oh
In
yeah.
It was a day before the release, and that really took a toll on the film. So I'm hoping that once it comes out in Hindi, people will really give it like a serious watch and give it the due credit that it deserves.
Hmm. Now, I wasn't going to ask you about it, but since you reminded me of that, the Hema Committee report, I think for me, I think it's a good sweep up, right? I think it's good for, I think, especially survivors who have gone through stuff but have not had that strength to really come out with their story. How do you feel about the way things have panned out in Malayalam cinema? Because I think it really shook. I mean, it's like how when Hindi cinema had the Me Too movement,
Yeah.
it really shook up. But then at the same time, I felt like, it was a balance, isn't it? Where the actual survivors got that platform, but then there were people who were using it to their advantage as well, when things haven't worked out. So it's a very slippery slope. But how have you come to terms with that, Vishak, actually?
I mean, like you said, I mean, it's a very tricky situation, and I know that it can go both ways, and people can use it for their own advantage and things like that. But I think it was a conversation. It started a conversation. It started a conversation that had to have had. I mean, you cannot, as an industry, we cannot turn a blind eye to these things anymore. I think that time is behind us. I think safeguards are required for women professionals in this industry, not just safeguards in terms of sexual harassment and things on those lines, in terms of basic safety and in terms of basic necessities. You know, because Malayalam cinema is such a small industry, there are certain facilities that are sometimes overlooked. When it comes to women, something like even a toilet facility for women when we're shooting out in the middle of nowhere, but those things that are basic necessities have to be provided, right? So you shouldn't have your colleagues running around to try and find a washroom to go relieve themselves. That's unthinkable, and I don't think that should be the norm. But that said, I also feel that no cultural change is possible without a top-down approach. I don't think that it is possible for for the victims and for the people at a very lower level in the industry food chain to make a lasting impact. I think for a lasting systemic cultural change to come, it has to be top down. It has to be filmmakers. It has to be producers who set the standards on their respective projects, and do that enough, and then I think it'll become a part of the culture for the industry as a whole. And I'm so glad that it happened in Malayalam. I'm so glad that it started here, and then that those victims, and for people who want to speak about these things, that there is a platform now. There are committees, redressal forums on every film set now that has been mandated by the film organizations, all of which are great and all of which are movements in the right direction. So I think it's a small step, but I think it's a very, very, very significant step to really get the ball rolling with regards to this thing.
Oh, amazing. Well, no, I think it's interesting, isn't it? It's like kind of showing the dichotomy because on one hand you had a film like All You Imagine Is Light,
Yeah.
which did really well globally. And then at the same time you had the HIMA committee report, but actually in a way positive changes. I mean, I wouldn't say like then it's negative because obviously it's a very positive step for survivors to really have that security and that sense of comfort of actually speaking out and stuff. So I think it's very good. It just goes to show that art is definitely going forward in either way. So that's a very progressive thing, I think.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I just hope that people don't misuse it, Anuj, because that just like it just sets the whole thing back. It really spoils the momentum. It really gives it like it takes away the authenticity of the whole movement. And I hope and pray that people don't use it for their own selfish needs.
I'm sure it won't. I'm sure it won't. I think all will be well. But I think it's also worth mentioning that footage is also presented by Anurag Kashyap.
Perfect.
And I think when it comes to Rabbit Hole, I think Officer on Duty begins like that, actually, doesn't it? And then obviously I watched a very beautiful film, I think last year as well, called Parking, or was it the year?
Hmm.
Tamil film, I think it was.
Last year, I think it was last year. Yeah.
It was incredible. So I think when it comes to Rabbit Hole films, I'm a big fan of. So I definitely will catch footage for sure when it comes out.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
Wow, Vishak, this has been incredible. Thank you so much
Likewise.
for sharing
Thank
some valuable insights of cinema, the subjects surrounding cinema, and of course, delving into the depths as well of psychological aspects of the darker characters that you've played. I think it's very wonderful. I think audiences watching this interview will definitely be very inspired as well, for sure.
Thank you, Anuj. Means a lot. All the best to you too. I hope you get to watch footage. I really look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Definitely. No, I will do, for sure.